950. Real Texas, Real Talk. KPRC Houston, an iHeart radio station.
Displaying religious objects at work. How does your employer feel about it? How do your fellow employees feel about it? There are plenty of people. They did a survey recently of not only Christians but also people who are Jewish, people who are Muslim, asking them about whether or not they felt comfortable either wearing a religious symbol at work or displaying a religious symbol or dressing in a way that would sort of let you know what their faith is. And it seemed that at least the better part of half of people didn't really feel comfortable with that, which seems like a shame. You'd like to think we live in a world that's open-minded enough where you are free to be who you are wherever it is that you are. But I'm sure this is something that HR departments have to wrangle with, especially this time of the year, with Christmas right around the corner and people wanting to display probably Christmas trees and all sorts of other symbols. I personally don't think of a Christmas tree as a religious symbol. It's more of a pagan symbol when you get right down to it, but a tree with lights is associated with Christmas. So I probably would be having a hard time making that argument in court. Joining us to talk about all this is Javier Pérez. He's an attorney at law. He specializes in this kind of stuff. Javier, welcome to AM 950 KPRC. What does the law tell us about what you can and cannot do at work regarding religious expression?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. This, as you said, can be a thorny issue this time of the year. The law requires that employees be treated equally. So an employer has discretion to determine, we don't want any religious symbols on display. That is permissible, but you can't allow for some and not others. So
okay.
It really is a question of general policy, yes.
And I'm guessing for a lot of employers, and I don't mean to point the finger at them, but I'm guessing for a lot of them, it's just easier to say no religious symbols than it is to worry about whether or not you're going to have fighting going on amongst your employees over things.
I think so. I mean, kind of if you come down with a strict policy, it's strict for everybody, and that's kind of the simpler way to do it.
Have you found, is there, I'm sure there's differences between how corporations handle this, especially big corporations, and how more mom and pop businesses do it.
Absolutely. So larger corporations are going to have more sophisticated HR departments and policies and that sort of thing that may be more kind of open to having all sorts of displays. Whereas mom and pop shop may be going with their gut and still trying to take care of their people, may not have as kind of a complex system and may end up kind of stepping on the line here or there inadvertently.
Well, that surprises me a little bit because I would think the mom and pop shop, especially when you have maybe just dozens of employees, it's pretty easy to just ask your employees, is everybody okay if we put up a Christmas tree? Is everybody okay if we do this or we do that? And you can almost put it up for an employee vote kind of a thing. Whereas a big corporation with hundreds, if not thousands of employees, it's I would think, a little bit more difficult to reach a consensus.
I think that is true. I'm saying that the HR departments are kind of built to handle kind of more complicated situation.
But do they shy? Don't they kind of shy away from that kind of thing? Aren't they kind of trying to avoid controversy at all costs?
I think there is a caution in an HR department that may not be there in a smaller company. But I do think these days especially people are trying to be more inclusive and may actually try to accommodate the whole range of faiths or other differences.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because in a perfect world, that's what should happen, right? We're all adults. We all should be able to get along to the point where you have your religious beliefs that you're free to practice, and so do I, and there's no reason for either one of us to be offended by the other one.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that has been kind of a more recent trend. So it is a pleasant surprise in a lot of ways.
Okay. So what are some of the things that any business should ask before they develop their policy as it relates to this? You mentioned it's kind of up to the employer. I'm guessing there's no state or federal laws that interfere in any way if a business either wants to or doesn't want to display religious symbols.
That's right. Kind of the markers are you can't force employees to participate in religious activities that don't want to. And what you allow for one, you need to allow for all. Otherwise, it's potentially kind of in that area of anti-discrimination law. So questions to consider would be, if we're going to do some, are we prepared to do it for everybody? Is kind of the basic question. And then, ask your employees what they're comfortable with, and make sure kind of everybody's on the same page.
Okay. Hey, I was just thinking of something as you're mentioning this. Does this mean that if I want to get out of the company Christmas party because I just don't want to go, I can just tell my boss it's a Christmas party and I'm offended, so I can't come?
I mean, you certainly can try it. I think, the employer can require your attendance at things if there's a religious kind of, I guess, arguably a religious component to it. You can claim that it's against your religion, and then the employer would have to show a more than de minimis or more than minimal burden without you being there. And, I don't know how much they care about you specifically being there, but that will kind of be the question.
Yeah. I'd hate to think that any of us would pursue somebody like yourself to represent us over going to a holiday party.
You might need to find another lawyer for that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you for turning me down. One last thing I want to ask you about, Javier, and that is what are considered religious symbols? And as long as we're here right before Christmas, I think that's a perfect example. Is a snowman a religious symbol? Is a Christmas tree or a holiday tree a religious symbol? How do we go about defining what constitutes a religious symbol and what isn't?
I think that's a good question. I think you could make an argument that anything kind of that's in a Christmas movie, for example, might be. I don't think you could say like a Hallmark movie is kind of a religious film. But I do think things related to, say, like a nativity scene would be. So kind of related to the birth of Christ, for example, I think it's kind of pretty clearly Christmas. But, Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus, maybe not.
I don't know, though. There's another gray area you just opened up there. I've seen people in the past, granted they're not very tasteful decorators for the holidays, but I've seen Frosty the Snowman as part of a nativity scene before.
Well, I haven't seen that. That'd be interesting to see.
All right. Javier, thanks for joining us today. Have a Merry Christmas. I hope I didn't offend you by saying that, and we'll talk again someday, I'm sure.
Not at all. And Merry Christmas to you, too.
Thank you.